All right, people. Hey, how's it going? How are you doing? It is the 9th of January 2019, and this morning I came across a story which I found rather amusing. Who some YouTubers, Tim Pool in particular, and others, but he's the main person who I heard the story from first, are covering a I guess a guideline or protocol released by the American Psychological Association for dealing with men and boys. So the title is APA Issues First Ever Guidelines for Practice with Men and Boys. And one of the main themes of the article is how to deal with harmful masculinity, so called. And I went digging around and I found a preceding article which seems to be the basis for the one that people are talking about today, which is called Harmful Masculinity and Violence: Understanding the Connection and Approaches to Prevention. So this to me is hilarious, and I'm going to read some of it and I'm going to give my appraisal on it because I am someone who is fascinated with human psychology, human behavior, and how things work generally, and even how science operates and how scientific theories or concepts or practices are built up, and how they sometimes seem so certain in descriptions of reality that are so obviously just contrived nonsense that is used as a means of controlling people and manipulating people. And unfortunately, psychology is a home of such bad science and manipulative cultural reinforcement. So, as I sip my coffee, I haven't had coffee in a few days, but my skin is still bad because I was eating carbs, so I figured I should just drink some coffee and have a little more skip in my step and pop in my thought and spoken word. So yeah, the concept of harmful masculinity, to get into it from my own perspective first, because I am someone who is a masculine male. I personify archetypally traditional masculine characteristics, and I do so to my own detriment because in this world there's a lot of passive aggression, there are a lot of mendacious weasels, there are a lot of shitheads that are just everywhere that you have to deal with. And when I was young, I was very weak. I was not athletically gifted or inclined at all when I was young. So I got physically bullied a lot when I was a little pussy. But I took an interest in combat sports and physical fitness as I became a huge mixed martial arts fan in my mid-teens. And since then, I've, been working on my physical fitness and my ability to do harm to others when and if needed. And I am capable of doing harm to pretty much most humans if I so choose to, and I conscientiously choose not to. But at the same time, I understand that the ability to use violence is one of the most important characteristics an adult male can have, because if you are physically harmless or even weak, then you're going to be taken advantage of, you are going to be bullied, you are going to be manipulated, and you are going to be treated like you are bottom of the food chain. And that's just the facts of the matter. That's reality. That's how human beings are. And I came to know this very, very early in life. And I understood more and more as I got bigger and stronger and became very big and pretty physically strong, and not just physically strong, but capable of doing physical harm to another human being. I learned that, well, people don't bully you when you're capable of doing them harm. And instead, people, have to get tricky and have to use your strength against you and make your will to aggression the problem rather than their will to manipulate or their passive aggression or their mendacious behavior. So I see studies like this basically being the result of institutional or societal fear of male revolt from the control systems that are being built around the species, and people are more and more disillusioned with them, and there is a growing sense that there is going to be violent revolution and that there are going to be some changes happening, and it's going to be men who are exerting their intellectual and potentially physical force on the mechanisms of control, and those who are responsible for creating the mechanisms of control in the world, basically attempting to subjugate us and turn us into human resources, while at the same time completely destroying our identity, our national and cultural integrity, our social cohesion, on and on and on. The Western human, and I say the male more so and more particularly because, well, women are being coddled and women are being treated as some sort of victim class, and the real attack vector is focused on the males because we are the ones who are a threat to the culture creators. We are the ones who are a threat to the international bankers who are trying to subvert our cultures and take over our nations. We are the ones who are a threat. We are the ones who are going to understand the problems, and we are the ones who are going to fight the wars and the revolutions, and however you want to define the battles that will be being waged in the future. The men are the ones who are going to wage those battles, and the men are the only threat to the opposition as far as them losing the battle for the control of the West. And that's why it's the Western white male that is targeted. And the target of all these studies and the focus of all these studies, even though the Western white male is not the most violent of males, even though the Western white male is actually fairly intellectually well developed, even though the Western white male is the one responsible for the protection of Western civilization. So, on that point, I'm going to read some of the initial study, Harmful Masculinity and Violence, Understanding the Connection and Approaches to Prevention. Western culture defines specific characteristics to fit the patriarchal ideal masculine construct. Okay, to open, what a pile of bullshit. I mean, someone is trying to fuck with your head when the opening sentence in an article is so unnecessarily convoluted and nebulous. What does that even mean? Western culture defines specific characteristics to fit the patriarchal ideal masculine construct. So, culture as a whole defines somehow specific characteristics not defined in this to fit the patriarchal ideal. The patriarchal ideal, okay, so everyone is working together to make society fit the patriarchal ideal? Is this being done intentionally? Is this being done with open discussion or forethought? No, no, it's not. This is just a ridiculous claim that whoever the hell wrote this pulled out of their academic dry ass. And, well, they're having a difficult time putting a coherent sentence together such that they can actually make sense regarding the claims that they are attempting to make. So anyway, to continue, the socialization of masculine ideals starts at a young age and defines ideal masculinity as related to toughness, stoicism, heterosexism, self-sufficient attitudes, and the lack of emotional sensitivity and of connectedness. Wow, another giant pile of bullshit and word salad. So let's break this sentence down too. The socialization. So they're taking the perspective that all human, or in this case male behaviors, are a result of social constructs and socialization. And it's curious, the term ideals is used repeatedly, 4 times in the first 2 sentences. And throughout this article, the term ideal is used over and over and over again instead of the term behavior. Okay, and I found that very curious. Ideals, it's like something that you're trying to aspire to. But it's not like you behave a certain way because you were trying to aspire to a certain ideal. Okay, sometimes you do, and sometimes some people do. But the term ideal is being like shoehorned in here inappropriately to supersede the concept of behavior, because that's how they want to frame it. It's like people idealizing a certain way of being, and they're intentionally behaving that way, and they are making it such that it's not biologically rooted in human biology and physiology, like in the endocrine system and the testosterone that courses through the veins of men, which makes us what we are, which inclines us toward certain behavior patterns, which is something that results in aggression and violence and male characteristics generally. So, within 1.5 sentences, I was going to say 2, but I didn't even finish breaking down the second pile of bullshit that this person has vomited onto this article as what? As thesis, as hypothesis. I don't even know what the hell this nonsense is supposed to be, other than mind-numbing, vacuous, propagandistic bullshit. So anyway, the socialization of masculine ideal starts at a young age and defines ideal masculinity as related to toughness, stoicism, heterosexism, self-sufficient attitudes, and a lack of emotional sensitivity and of connectedness. So they say, like, they list these characteristics as if they are a bad thing. Toughness? Is toughness a bad thing? No, I would actually think toughness is pretty good, unless you want a subjugated underclass who are intellectually and physically defenseless, and so more malleable for your techno-fascist, brave new world order future paradigm that you're trying to initiate there, scientists and culture creators. Stoicism, is stoicism a bad thing? You know, that's essentially what having pause of thought, the will to be careful and deliberating in action, the characteristics of being brooding and thoughtful and careful as far as I understand the term. I don't know the technical definition of the term, but I understand where it comes from. Heterosexism, because we know heterosexuality is a bad thing in this day and age, right, kids? Oh no, you gotta embrace the rainbow, and if you don't, well, there must be something wrong with you. You know, it's better if you take it in the ass, really. The scientific papers say so. Self-sufficient attitudes, because obviously if people are self-sufficient, then they're not subservient to government systems or medical systems or the experts who want to try to tell you how to live, right, folks? Right? Of course, you don't want people to be self-sufficient. And a lack of emotional sensitivity and of connectedness. I mean, like, I don't understand this. A lack of emotional sensitivity. So you want people to not be aggressive or angry, but you also want them to be emotionally sensitive. I mean, choose one, especially if you're talking about males who have testosterone coursing through their bodies. Like, if you want someone to be emotionally sensitive and they are male, then that means anger and aggression are going to be a part of that emotional collage, as it were. So anyway, to continue, boys learn to be men from the men in their lives, from their own experiences navigating our social norms, and from the large social and cultural contexts. Well, can I say, as a male who is someone who you could define as having a harmful masculinity, in that I'm comfortable with my will to aggression, and I understand that it is a useful tool to use aggression and force sometimes against certain people under certain conditions as a defensive measure. So I grew up with no strong male role models in my life. My father was almost never around. Past the first few years of my life, he was like doing shift work. He was an alcoholic. He was miserable. Him and my mother didn't get along. So I spent most of my childhood with my mothers. I had older brothers. I spent almost no time with them. I was really not well socialized, and I was not around men like almost ever in my formative years, for most of my life actually, and up until this point in my life. I spend most of my time alone. I don't spend a lot of time with men. Most of my childhood I spent with my mother. So the aggressive behaviors that I sometimes express are natural to me. They are biologically rooted because, well, I didn't have men around me to teach me to be aggressive and violent and mean when it's appropriate. Okay? So once again, this paper is just spinning conjecture and just essentially lying to people with flowery verbiage in such a way that it seems scientific, but it is in no way scientific. And this is why I have little faith in science in this day and age, because nefarious weasels who are career-minded academics can create all these nonsensical arguments and support them in so many disingenuous ways and format it in such a way that it's pseudoscientific, and then hand it back to you as if it is science when it is nothing of the sort. It's not even good writing. Like, it's not. It's terrible. It's stupid. It does not make sense, and it is disingenuous. So this is just so wrong in so many ways that it's making me want to clench and shake my fists and tense my face and drink more coffee. Boys live under intensified pressure to display gender-appropriate behaviors according to the ideal male code. That's fair enough. In children, if you don't act a certain way in certain groups, and it's, isolated in certain groups, and it's not in other groups, so it's not catch-all male behavior. Fair enough. When you're in some young groups, when you're a young man, there is, a certain predisposition to rewarding manly, assertive, aggressive behavior. And if you're not like that, then you're going to be one of the lower down primates in the hierarchy, and you're going to be bullied by the ones who are willing to be more assertive and aggressive and all that. But that just shows that it's naturally expressed in human beings generally. I mean, this happens all over the world, like with young boys. There are aggressive, tough guy group behaviors that are observable in young boys in, I would presume, every society and civilization that there is, as well, testosterone. But I don't have the data at hand, but there is generally a predisposition towards violence in young males, and it is more common in young males than in any other demographic. So I would think that shows that there is a natural predisposition in young men to behave that way, and it's not a social construct. It is just how men are, and it's not a bad thing. I mean, we're trying to explain away natural behaviors to make it more convenient for society at large, or the people who are attempting to control the society at large. But how about we accommodate the natural behaviors of the actual human beings, rather than trying to deny natural behaviors to make more people more easy to control and more malleable for those who wish to control others, you know what I mean? So next paragraph. Looking at the development of aggression throughout childhood, we know that not only do aggressive behaviors can emerge at an early age, they also tend to persist over time without early prevention intervention. So, this isn't even written well. I mean, this is just, there's an extra can in here. I mean, this is supposed to be a scientific paper, and there are fucking typos which make it almost illegible in its incoherence. So anyway, I'll just take out that can. Looking at the development of aggression throughout childhood, we know that not only do aggressive behaviors emerge at an early stage, they also tend to persist over time without early prevention or intervention. Yeah, okay. Aggressive behaviors can emerge at an early age. Maybe with the onset of puberty, it's more common because you're producing testosterone in your body. Maybe during those times, the social roles become confused, and in your coming of age and you're developing into manhood, that there is a lot more going on that you need to account for, and there's a lot more interpersonal conflict between you and others. Just a thought. And why does that have to be a social construct? Is that not natural? Is that not as natural as it could be? The socialization of the male characteristics mentioned above also onsets at an early age, making it a prime time period for prevention and intervention. I don't even know what that means. The prevention of naturally male behaviors, or the intervention to prevent natural male behaviors in young men. So what? Are you gonna dose them up with ADHD medication like Ritalin and amphetamines, like seems to be a common remedy in this day and age for children expressing undesirable behaviors? Yeah, sure. Get more kids addicted to amphetamines and more psychotic drugs or antipsychotic drugs are more of that Brave New World soma that you doctors are profiting from, that you're pushing on people because of the pharmaceutical companies who lobby you and your industry, and who you benefit from the sale of, which you benefit from the sale of. Pardon me. The possibility of negative effects of harmful masculinity occurs when negative masculine ideals are upheld. That's a tricky question to get at, because it's framing it in that these ideals are upheld, and it's not ideals, it's behavior. They just completely remove the term behavior from the argument, and that would make things a lot more honest and easy to understand. So it's like acting like these behaviors are being somehow accommodated, but it doesn't anywhere explain specifically how they're being accommodated. So the way they're framing it is that like toxic or harmful masculinity is being accommodated by the society, by the social construct, and that's why it is being expressed. Whereas it's natural behavior, and what they want to do is counter the natural behavior, or make it so that the natural behavior is less common or less problematic. So they want to create a culture where they nerf the world, and they make being angry or aggressive just an untenable or punishable position. And I understand this because in my last relationship, and not to bring that bullshit up again, but in my last relationship, I had a very attractive girlfriend, and other men would be constantly encroaching, constantly flirty with her, constantly dissing me to get to her, to impress her, to like one-up me, all this bullshit. And my natural response was aggression and severity and being fucking mean, and it generally worked pretty well between me and the other males. But the thing is that as a result, that meant she got less attention, and so she didn't like that, and so she punished my perceivable as harmful or toxically masculine behaviors. But the thing is, like, as far as I was concerned, that was my natural response to the threat of another male trying to interfere in my personal relationship with my significant other at the time. And that was an appropriate defensive response, and it was a suitable defensive response, and it was a suitable deterrent, and it worked. But the thing is, when you have someone who wants the attention of other males, and you are deterring the other males, then you are perceived as the problem, because you are reducing their potential for sexual opportunity and opportunity generally. So then you are seen as, a toxic male, or your masculinity and aggression are overzealous and harmful. But, only harmful to her, creating more sexual opportunities for herself. It's like with governments, you know what I mean? They want to use the men to be the human resources and the stewards of their bullshit state or cultural apparatus. But if there is anything that offends the male to make him feel that he needs to be aggressive to defend himself on any front, like by being anti-mass migration, for example, then they want to treat your inherent defense mechanisms in your will to be aggressive when confronted with perceived threats as pathological somehow, as if you reacting naturally to a perceived threat is somehow abhorrent, which it is not. and we are getting the most natural behaviors criminalized. We are having the most natural behaviors framed in such a way in that we, for feeling how we feel, being how we are, and expressing ourselves how we do, we are being treated like we are wrong, like we are bad, like we are evil, and that we need to change. But no, no, no. That is manipulation. That is manipulation, and it is in the interest of those trying to coerce us into subservience, to trick us into thinking so. So do not deny natural law. Do not deny your natural feelings, and know what is best for you and your relationships and your environment, and act how you understand as appropriate as a man, because you are the defense against injustice in this world. If you are conscientious, if you are strong, if you are willing to act, and you must not let yourself be manipulated into a stupor and into subservience by people confusing you, defining your natural, just reactions to perceived threats as somehow reprehensible. Continue, where was I? Primary gender role socialization aims to uphold patriarchal codes by requiring men to achieve dominant and aggressive behaviors. Oh my God, like every single one of these sentences is so tricky and so slippery and so unnecessarily complicated, which is always the sign of manipulation. That is just appalling to me, and I don't even like reading it, and I like even less teasing it apart. But when I do, and when I execute well, then it is satisfying. But just reading this repulses me to my very core. As a writer, as a philosopher, as a thinker, this is just disgusting in its quintessence. So primary gender role socialization aims to uphold patriarchal codes. What the fuck does that even mean? That is such nonsense. Primary gender roles, as if you were told to act a certain way. Oh yes, this is your primary gender role within the context of socialization in this environment. You know what I mean? And constantly reinforcing the idea that gender roles are a social construct. I've read like, what, 3 paragraphs? And how many times has it said that? Like iterated it in different ways, but it has said that like 3 or 4 times already in 3 short paragraphs, and instead of behavior keeps using the term ideals. So you can see how tricky and manipulative and just not accurate this language is. I mean, when things are on the money, they make sense. And it's easy to make them make sense. Obviously, you can make a point more convoluted to make it sound more pretty. But this doesn't sound pretty, and it's not, it's not convoluted for the sake of literary styling and accentuating the depth of the ideas expressed. It's using very tricky, manipulative language to, like, distort language into speaking untruth as truth. So patriarchal codes. What patriarchal codes? Are these patriarchal codes? You know, like, it's using all these terms. They are not clearly defined. There is nothing referencing any of these bullshit loaded terms that they're using. And as a result, that means they are semantically empty, semantically meaningless, that this is just waffle. This is nonsense that does not mean anything. Okay, yeah, if you're some stuffy academic who actually takes this seriously, you understand the definitions of the words, and then you, like, force yourself to make sense out of it because it's in your interest as an academic, and it's for the good of your career, damn it, so you better understand and nod like a good student, nod like a good subservient intellectual fucking lapdog, which is what academics very, very often are. But I digress. Yeah, so primary gender role specification aims to uphold patriarchal codes by requiring men to achieve dominant and aggressive behaviors. So it's saying that, like, it is necessary, or it is like rewarded, that men achieve dominant and aggressive behaviors, and it doesn't really tie in the fact that people behave aggressively for the sake, very often, of self-defense and in response to perceived injustice. No, it's just that, oh, it's about dominance, oh, it's about aggression, oh, there is no reason for the aggression, oh, it's just power play, patriarchal politics. So, the concept of gender roles is not cast as a biological phenomena. Again, what, like fourth or fifth time in 3 paragraphs? But rather a psychological and socially constructed set of ideas that are malleable to change. So here we see that the angle here is one of behaviorism right out of B.F. Skinner. It's like, your genetics don't matter. Your hormones don't matter. Your endocrinal ratios don't matter. The fact that you are genetically something that naturally throughout the animal kingdom, down to the crustaceans, as has been substantiated by Dr. Jordan Peterson, all of these behaviors that can be seen throughout the animal kingdom, down to the level of crustacean, they're not natural. They're just social constructs. You see, the lobsters who are being macho lobsters, well, they're just trying to act cool, really. It's a social construct. You see, if you dominate in the lobster world as far as like claw wrestling goes, then you're a cool guy and you get social credibility points, and that's all it's about. It's just about these vain macho lobster douches who think they're cool, really, which is, the entire fucking argument of this bullshit paper. So anyway, that's the first 3 paragraphs. I'm going to pause there because my analysis has been rather in-depth, and I need to take a break because this is just fucking not the most enjoyable to read, and is making my head spin trying to translate this nonsense into actual English. So yeah, on that point, thank you for listening. Salutations. Hey everyone, this is just a little reminder to say show some support, like, comment, share my videos, and donate if you can.